Do it live on a Monday edition. The gang's back together. Merely Bo, the great Z. How you living, buddy?
Well,
you asked.
I'm thrilled to be back with you.
Sure, same.
Thrilled to be back around my family.
Yeah.
But it's called Paradise Valley for a reason.
Yeah.
Because it's awesome. Had a great trip out there. Big shout out to the cook, the kid Simze, who just actually did a nice deal and got his guy Jonathan Jones, highest paid slot corner in NFL history.
There you go.
Going back to the Patriots on a 2-year deal. It's a good job, Simze. But it was great. Unbelievable trip. Unbelievable weather.
Yeah.
Some of the best golf courses I've ever played. A couple of my favorites that I've ever played.
Yeah.
Out at Troon. We played Greyhawk, which is where the NCAA men's and women's are.
Okay.
Their championships have been 21, 22, and 23. We actually played two groups behind some of the ladies from Georgia.
Okay.
Getting ready for all the college kids are coming out for practice rounds. It was awesome.
It's a pretty good gig to play like Power 5 golf.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good gig. Like I was just saying,
it's high level. You got to be good.
I'm not suggesting you don't.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like the notion of like I never would if you didn't tell me that, I would not know that like the men's or women's golf team from fill in the blank SEC, Big Ten, wherever school would just take a trip to Arizona to practice rounds. Like the fact that, quite honestly, that does the best job of anything that I've heard in the last 2 months on explaining what's wrong with the NCAA. This is a non-revenue sport. In fact, this sport is in the red. Golf's in the red in every way.
I'm not going to poo-poo. This is
no, I'm not. No. This has nothing to do with you or the golf course or anything. The notion that you would take money out of pocket against your budget to send a golf team to Arizona to play practice rounds is wild to me. And that's when they think about that model, like they have so much money that comes in through football and basketball.
Yeah.
And they have to spread it out to everybody else to make it work. And because of that, they can't call football and basketball what it is, which is revenue generating professional minor league sports. They can't call it that, so they have to spend it everywhere else, and that's an example of it. That's why I said it's a great gig. Like, as of right now, they get budgets as if they are making money.
But even when I was at, like, Emory, we would go before, like, a big tournament and go play practice rounds.
On a plane across the country?
It was in the area.
You drove, though.
We did a lot of busing.
Sure. Yeah, that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's also Emory versus Georgia.
But guess what? The Emory golf team and the Georgia golf team make the exact same amount of money.
For sure.
Nothing.
But some things are loss leaders.
Nothing. So the NCAA, they're all loss leaders except for football and men's basketball.
I would imagine, though, that at some level, the fact that, their tournament will be on television.
It's on television not because anyone's paying for it. It's on television as a throw-in.
I mean, it's a pretty good TV.
That's how it works. What is that? Do you have something going on?
Some construction, I think.
Oh, it scared me. I thought it was maybe an alarm.
Yeah, me too.
What's wrong?
Oh, we heard that it felt like there was an alarm in the building, but I think it was construction.
Yeah.
It felt like it faints. We're
that continues to get louder by the day.
Yeah.
So
that's great. And then you come back here and I made the vow in February I'm not going to complain about the weather, so I don't want to do that. But this is pretty damn cold.
Awful.
For this time of year.
Yeah, awful.
Like this time of year, the walk with Buddy Garrity this morning, he was not crazy about it. Snow
falling.
falling.
This is terrible. And to come back from
to flourish
75 and sunny every day where people are just living their best lives.
I told you that. That's like when we were coming out of Disney,
ridiculous.
It was like, and it was warm down there, and it was like you come back and you're like, I didn't know if it was better. I think it's better to have gone than had not gone. But almost like when you're in the middle of this, it's better to just keep your nose down.
Yeah.
And just keep stacking days until you get to better. And then don't do the thing where you say, oh, this is how everybody else lives. Or not everybody else, but some live. Yeah.
Some.
Well, either way.
Smart people smarter than us.
We had the Buckeyes on Thursday and Friday. So we have not done a show since Wednesday.
Right.
Was the last time that we did a show. So there's been a lot going on. And just to get you up to speed on where you are in the league, because there's a lot going on with it, teams can engage in legal tampering as of noon today. And so there's been a lot of deals already, none involving us in terms of free agency or in terms of former players that I've seen. Now, I acknowledge I was in the car for 35 minutes coming over here, and I didn't see anything. We'll get to the Watson restructure in a second, but I didn't see anything else. Was there anything I missed?
For us?
Yeah.
No, just the report over the weekend that A.J. Green will be back on a one-year deal.
Yeah.
Exclusive rights free agent. And, yes, he definitely makes a lot of sense. Can play inside, outside, good there. And then that there are reports that Sione Takitaki and the Browns are close, and that Ethan Posick and the Browns are close.
Yeah.
Both of those from Mary Kay, who will join us at 2 o'clock.
That's right. Mary Kay will join us at 2.
Oh, that's good.
John Johnson to the Chargers, reunited with Brandon Staley and Jeff Howard with the Chargers.
Oh, well, that affects us. When did that happen? In the last I didn't see that.
Yeah, that was reported early, maybe 12:30-ish. Probably when you're in the car.
Yeah, I was in the car, so I missed that. So John Johnson back
to the Chargers, back with
Staley
and
in
Jeff
Los
Howard.
Angeles. Yep. And so he goes there.
So
okay,
that's somewhat our news. And then David Onyemata, who's a defensive tackle that the Browns were reportedly interested in. He was one of the guys that fit their profile. He signed a deal that will pay him roughly $12 million a year with the Atlanta Falcons. So cross him off the list then.
Okay, so there you go. So of those things, I was aware of all of them except for Johnson. The Johnson one happened in the last 45 minutes or so. So I missed that one. So I did see the Deshaun Watson restructure. That was the big news this morning, converting the bulk of the $46 million base salary to a signing bonus and creating $36 million in cap space. Mary Kay's been all over this. I'm glad she's joining us at 2. She kind of had that list with Sione Takitaki agreeing to the one-year deal. Ethan Posick likely to resign here, according to her. The Browns like to land a big-name defender or 2 early in the process. So she will join us at 2 o'clock. Good job out of you, Gibbet, and good job out of her joining us. It's very, very, very welcome. In terms of how this is going so far, and we'll get to the big – I got to look at this. It came in hot. Just want to make sure. I don't want to step on everything. All right, so that's coming up next. So we'll get to some of the other big trades have already happened. The quarterbacks that are all kind of blowing in the wind a little bit.
Yep.
Take me. You're the associate to the assistant general manager. Give me the blueprint for today for AB.
Well, I think obviously we know what the target areas are, and whether that ends up being in free agency or trade. You got to get somebody on the interior of the defensive line. Hargrave would be at the top of the list. Draymond Jones probably close, and then a trade for DeForest Buckner. Now, if you don't end up getting that big of a swing, then maybe you're looking at, a Sheldon Rankins later on, former first-round pick, as somebody that could kind of fit in there into that defensive tackle room at a more reasonable salary rate. You'd love to bring Ethan Posick back if the price is right. And then on offense, it's that speed receiver. And so you're looking at, maybe a McCole Hardman. I think that you could be looking in trade, trying to get free an Elijah Moore from the Jets, for example, Brandon Cooks from the Texans.
Yeah.
Odell is still in the mix, according to everybody. We'll talk to Mary Kay about that as well. But I think that's really what you want to do. And then, the edge, it feels like if you can add a good veteran as a situational pass rusher on a cheap one-year deal, you do that. But it feels like, depending on how these days go, we could get to the point where 42 is like locked in as an edge defender in what is a deep edge class.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's one of the ways you really could see this whole thing going. And, I think Andrew Berry, I know that they are hard at work trying to lock some things down, and we'll see how it ends up going. A little quarterback news, Jared Stidham signing a 2-year, $10 million deal with the Broncos, choosing to play for Sean Payton. He will be backing up Russell Wilson there.
The Watson restructure, do you have a good handle on how these things happen? And eventually, because it looked like the cap number for him was 64 going forward, but is that all what's real and what's not in the camp?
None of it's real.
Because I feel like there's such a big deal of lack of understanding on how this is all done. And I understand it when it's I think the other thing is okay, fine if it's not all guaranteed money, but then all of Watson's is guaranteed money. So how do you sort through all of that?
So it's just a cap economics, basically. So it opens up $30 million. So his 2023 salary cap number would have been $55 million without the restructure. So the Browns shift it forward to $63.9 million for 2024, 25, 26. By the way, they're going to do this again, and then they're going to sign a whole new contract, and this is always what they were going to do. So this is something that is expected to happen quite a bit with him. And they'll convert and take advantage of all the different things they can maneuver around with the salary cap to get it done. I don't think they're done restructuring, by the way. I think they could easily restructure Amari Cooper. I think Batonio could get restructured. Miles could get restructured. So we could make even more space this year. But you're basically kind of kicking it down the can, and you add a voidable year at the end, which is $8.967 million. That's obviously not going to happen. They'll restructure it at some point and then sign another new contract and extension.
So the only way that you have – because like the Bucks, the Saints, like teams end up having to pay the piper on this because they've done the same thing in past years where you kick it down the road. But eventually the can hits the wall, and the only way to avoid the can hitting the wall is to do a whole new deal.
Right.
Otherwise, eventually, you're going to have to pay for it.
Yep.
So that's how they'll get around with Watson, is that Deshaun Watson is going to quarterback the Browns for a very, very long time, and so you can kick it almost forever with him.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the way it goes. The same would not be true of the other guys you mentioned, where you wouldn't want to keep doing new contracts for them
right
in perpetuity. But with Watson, it's one of those things where he's in his prime. He's going to be here another decade, God willing, and so that's how that works. I just wanted to go through that because I think there's confusion a little bit sometimes of what that means, and like people say, well, the salary cap's not real. It is. I mean, it isn't, but it is. There is a time everything does come home to roost on it.
He's going to get his money.
Yes, he will definitely get all of it.
Right, and they could end up converting some of it to a signing bonus so that they pay him up front on something. There's a lot that they're going to be able to do, and see how they ultimately decide to go about doing that going forward.
I think you can be, it's fair to be critical of all sorts of things when it comes to where all of these things shake out. But one thing that, in terms of this front office, but one thing that you can say unequivocally is they're really smart with money.
Yeah.
And they're really smart with contracts, and they're always going to be flexible. They are never going to mortgage anything to where they are in a corner without a way out. And that's something that ought to let you sleep easy at night, that you'll always be able to be players in this, because they're always worried about not only now, but 3 years from now, 5 years from now, making sure there's roster flexibility for a very, very long time around here. So that's one of the things. You want to talk about, receiver drafts or D-line drafts, whatever, fine, all of that. But this part they're very, very good at when it comes to being malleable with the cap. So that's where we stand right now. There are a billion things going on in free agency. Right now, it does feel like we're kind of in wait and see. There's the quarterback position, which is kind of holding the league hostage a little bit as we wait on a couple of things there. We had the enormous deal with the Bears, which happened on Friday, that we will get into.
And they've already made 2 moves today.
Yeah, and all of this worked quite well for them, being in the position that they were in the position of power. And they could end up with the guy that they wanted anyway in the top 3 or 4. If Jalen Carter falls, still might end up with him at 9. There's a lot of ways they could go, and they got DJ Moore out of the deal. So they've incredibly improved their team in a hurry and have been very aggressive today. So there's a lot to get to on that front as well. Busy sports weekend, busy NFL weekend. Good to have you back, my friend.
It's good to be back, and I'm excited to see kind of how this plays out. This is the start, obviously, of what this team is going to look like. This is the first chance to start building it, so I'm excited for that. But it's just good to be back with you, talking some ball. And, I mean, we got so much to talk about. The Bears, I was like, whoa, when I saw that. I know we're talking about that next.
We are. Yeah.
It's exciting. This is a fun time of the year.
Yeah.
This is a fun time of the football season.
For sure. And if you think about how aggressive and how good, so this is my 5th off season. This will be my sixth season next year doing it with you. And in every one of these, ultra aggressive from this front office, from this organization when it comes to free
5 years
agency.
ago was, I believe, Odell.
It was. Yeah. We maybe come full circle on him. Who knows?
Yeah.
We're off and running. Lots of fun today on the program. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet, coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland. passionate fan bases in the National Football League. Join the Brown season ticket member waitlist today. The best chance securing tickets for all home games in future seasons. Don't miss out. Go to clevelandbrowns.com/tickets or call 440-891-5050 to reserve your spot today. I got to tell you, we will get back to this NFL stuff in a second. One thing I want to get off my chest. We just got to pick a time zone, man. We got to pick one. Like, you can't be doing this switching stuff.
It's the worst.
I am not a snooze guy.
No.
Alarm 6 a.m. as it does every day, and I'm like, it was pitch black, and I'm like, oh, stop. The Bootsy was so sluggish this morning, he could hardly move. He's just dragging his butt everywhere he went. Yelled at him several times to come down. Wouldn't. I'm so tired.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And he was right. He goes, I think the only thing awake on me is my brain. And I said, well, that's debatable based on your performance over the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's awful. Like, I don't care which one. I think this one I like more sunlight at night. This feels to be one I like.
This is what we should be all the time.
Right.
Whatever this
and
is.
I know that, like, they tried to pass this through the Senate. Rubio's been trying to do this forever, and I think it did pass through the Senate.
We talked about this last week because you were like, it's done. I'm like,
no,
I don't
you were
think
right.
it's done.
Gibby was right. It's not done. I thought it was. It passed through the Senate, and then it got bogged down again in the stinking House.
Sitting there.
And it's just chilling. So the Senate reintroduced it. Today they reintroduced it, or this
Good.
week. Pick one. I don't care. Either stay in the other one or go to this one. I don't care. Stop monkeying around.
By the way,
with it.
another reason to love Arizona.
They just stay standard.
They don't participate. Yeah.
So they just stay standard time all the time. There's a couple of states that do that just stay standard all the time.
Brutal. Like yesterday morning, I woke up and I was like, a pretty good night's sleep. And then you remember, like, we sprung ahead. So really, it's.
Hold on. Breaking news. Former Eagles defensive tackle Javon Hargrave has reached an agreement on a 4-year, $80 million deal. Includes $40 million guaranteed at signing with the 49ers.
Well, that's not.
Let's set a set of rules on this. On the breaking
verified
news.
You just got
no. That
Nope.
I'm not worried about.
Okay.
On the breaking news,
Yeah.
I want you to say
Not Browns.
breaking news, not us.
Okay.
Or not Browns breaking news.
Okay.
Because I was excited. Whoa. Breaking news was your quote. I thought, okay, we got something. And then
Okay, fair.
to the Niners.
Fair.
Damn it all.
well,
that sucks.
Throw the disclaimer in right away so that I'm not hanging on your every word.
So you're not that excited.
Yeah.
Moderate excitement.
Well, it's fine. It doesn't really matter to me because he's not coming here.
Right.
They have an embarrassment of riches on that D-line anyway.
I mean,
Jeez.
So I don't know what.
By the
how
way, they
much
come
money-
here this year.
$20 million a
We'll play
year
them this year.
is pretty incredible. That is pretty good for him.
That market is going to be steep, Coach.
Well, I'll tell you what, it just makes honestly, if you end up, I don't know what kind of a trade you could pull off because the assets are not our strong suit in terms of draft picks, but that would be, DeForest Buckner not necessarily looking so bad, as I would say.
Yeah.
Draymond Jones obviously still in the mix for the Browns at the defensive tackle position. Sheldon Rankins, guys we mentioned like that. But how do you got Hargrave, Bosa.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're already dominant.
They had one of the best D-lines in football before this.
Correct.
The other thing it does for them is it takes away. I mean, those I think are the two best rosters in the NFC.
Yeah, it hurts.
And now you hurt the other best roster. Yeah, that sets that up. Lots going on. You want to do the? Should we do the? You want to do the Bears thing now, or do you want to do like some of the other movement that happened already or is happening? Let's do the Bears happened Friday, so let's use that. We'll use that at the end of the segment. Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins. That happened yesterday in exchange for a third and tight end Hunter Long. So there were a lot of rumors the Rams are going to do this. This to me feels a lot like Amari Cooper for a fifth.
Yep.
Even maybe more so. I know that Ramsey last year wasn't what he had been, but he's not that far removed either. This feels like nothing for him.
It feels free. Who is Hunter Long?
No clue.
Same. A third and Hunter Long for Jalen Ramsey. Yeah, sure. Now here's the thing. It really feels to me like this is a Miami Dolphins team that is all in and doesn't have a quarterback that it can count on to play more than a play.
Unless.
If he unretires again, come on.
I'm just saying.
I know.
I mean, doesn't it feel like that?
It does. Mike McGlinchey, by the way, it's not Browns news. Mike McGlinchey expect to sign with the Denver Broncos. It had been reported that he was going to the Bears by a fake Schefter Now it looks like the Broncos, Adam Schefter, are retweeting it.
Allbright will join us at 2:30.
And there's a lot of talk right now out of Denver that they are going to move one of their wide receivers.
Yeah, I see Graziano with that, and that one of those receivers could be in the mix as well. And Draymond Jones was in Denver too. So.
By the way, Javon Hargrave confirming Adam Schefter's tweet. Yes, sir. I don't know if you can do that before 4 o'clock on Wednesday, but just go ahead. Go ahead and find me.
You can't stop him. So there you go on that. A couple other things that have happened over the weekend. We mentioned the Ramsey deal. Deron Payne, who's a guy we mentioned right away, but then quickly I think we realized that it was going to be too rich for our blood. 4 years, $90 million, 28 guaranteed, 45 fully guaranteed.
Jeez.
He stays with the Commies. He's the second highest paid interior lineman behind only Aaron Donald per over the cap.
And Hargrave is now third.
He's now third.
Yep.
Austin Eckler is asking for a trade, requests permission to speak with other teams. Adam Schefter with that. The Vikings released Adam Thielen, Mr. Zagura.
So how crazy is it that you're Austin Eckler, that you have the second most touchdowns in the league, period, over the last 2 seasons, behind only Devontae Adams? You have been a godsend for your quarterback out of the backfield. You are the leading pass catcher amongst running backs. Since you have started, you have produced the last 2 years 1,600 total yards. You have produced 38 total touchdowns, and they won't give you a contract because he plays running back. Now, why did I raise my hand? Does this make me nervous? If I'm the Bengals, I'm moving on from Joe Mixon at this point. And I would welcome Austin Eckler. You're going to go play man all over the place and then leave Eckler one-on-one everywhere, and they run a run scheme that suits his skills better. I would be terrified about that. So I'd rather have him stay with the Chargers and not go.
Don't you talk like that, Ricky Bobby.
To the Bengals. That would be – there's already people making – that's one of the – supposedly that's a –
I would rather not have him go to the AFC.
I'd rather him not in our division.
Yeah.
Well, same –
what are you doing? Don't try to will that.
I'm not trying. I'm trying to unwill it. Maybe talk about it. It won't happen. But they threw to their backs the third most in the league.
Yeah.
And they could add the best receiving back in the league.
Yeah.
Why did the Chargers – you won't pay this guy? I mean, he is such a stud for them.
Well, and he's beyond just a standard – he's so much more than a standard running back. I mean, he's a receiver.
Right.
Is what he is.
Last 2 years, 177 catches, 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns just as a receiver. 1,800 yards and 25 touchdowns as a runner, 4.5 yards a carry.
Amazing. We mentioned Thielen being released by the Vikings over the weekend as well. The Eagles have given Darius Slay permission to seek a trade. Eagles have a lot going on. Brandon Graham is staying with the Eagles. I saw Jason Kelsey announcing as well that he's coming back for one more year. The Dolphins have informed quarterback Tua Tagovailoa they're picking up his fifth-year option. But still, that's I don't know. It doesn't feel like you'd put all – with the roster that they have, that you'd put all of your eggs in that basket with Tua and his health.
That's what I'm saying.
Seems crazy to me that you'd do that, and I don't. They don't sense me as crazy people. We mentioned Baker Mayfield potentially being a target for the Buccaneers. Jacoby Brissett also potentially as well. So, it's interesting. Like I could see Baker. Like, you think about what he did in Carolina last year. Like, he's a rah-rah guy, and he gets you to believe in camp. I mean, he did that in Carolina. That's how he won the job. And then you just go to play, and then it starts to sort itself out. I wonder if he's a way for, like, people in Tampa to, like, get them to believe a little bit in what they're doing, and then at the same time, you know, they're trying to tank. They're going to be one of the worst teams. Next year's a year to tank.
Yeah.
So they'll be one of the worst teams anyway. So it's kind of perfect in that role for both of those needs. The Raiders and Texans. I saw this as well. Easy. Look out.
It's an emergency. Charles Robinson sending out an emergency alert system from the government for the 49ers defense, as I accidentally somehow clicked on.
That's where that was. Yeah. So the Raiders interested in Jimmy Garoppolo. The Houston Texans interested in Jimmy Garoppolo per Ian Rappaport.
Good mentor.
And also, like, if you're going to draft the kid from Florida.
Right.
You know,
you need a bridge.
Have Garoppolo for a couple of years there. The Texans really blew it by beating Indy. It's really that simple. They blew it as big as
you
could be.
blew it, boy.
They went from controlling the draft to not. They did sign Robert Woods, 2 years, $15 million on that. We're all waiting on Rodgers. He said it won't be long before he makes his decision about his future. Stay tuned during an interview with Brandon Marshall on his I Am Athlete podcast. It's either Jets or done.
But just
very
do
clearly,
it.
like Murphy's comments from last week in Green Bay, he has no interest in bringing him back. They have none. So it's just a matter of does he play for the Jets or does he play nowhere?
Just do it.
Yeah, pick whichever one you want. Devin McCourty announcing his retirement after 13 seasons on Friday as well. And now the Bears pull the deal at number 1. So this happened on Friday. They deal a number 1 overall pick to the Panthers in exchange for DJ Moore, which helps the Bears, A, in that he's a damn fine receiver. B, they had a salary floor they had to get to, and he's making $20 million, so now they can spend the $20 million and give it to him. They had to have somebody to give money to. They get the 9th overall pick in exchange, in addition to a second-round selection. No, I don't think that's right. It's 9th overall. It's 61, so that would be.
Yeah, second round this year. Yep.
61 this year, yeah. And then first-rounder from them next year, and then a second-rounder in 2025. Now, the first-rounder in 2024 is the best. So even if the Panthers pick up another one, it's the best of the 2 picks they would have in the 2024 pick. So that is a hell of a haul for the Bears.
I love this deal.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great, great, great deal for the Bears. Loved it. DJ Moore, I'm a huge DJ Moore fan. I think he's a stud. Obviously, he struggled with the quarterback play that they had last year, but I think he's a stud, and that's a great number 1 to give for Justin Fields. Or they have assets, and you give Fields a year, and if it doesn't work this year, you still are in a position where you can do something about it. Which
if it
is
doesn't
a great
work,
trade.
you're going to have 2 high picks next year,
right? So
because Carolina's going to take a quarterback at 1, so they're not going to be great. So you could have 2 top 10 picks next year if you're bad again.
Exactly.
If Fields is great, you're going to have 2 first-round picks to add to it. It's a win for everybody. Right. You got a franchise guy, and you're done.
Totally.
I mean, you think about what he played with at receiver the first year and a half, and I'm not a Claypool guy at all.
No.
And I wouldn't have done that deal. I didn't like it when they did it. But now he can be competent. He's a big body target, right? So you now have him and Moore. You now have 2 guys.
Moore can work everywhere on the field.
He can work everywhere.
And you can run it with Fields. Yeah. You can run it with Montgomery and Khalil Herbert.
Even if at 9, you could get, whether you love Smith and Jigba or Addison, if you want to go receiver at 9, you could. Everyone's saying tackle, but like if you wanted to go receiver and just go bonkers with weapons,
well, they made a run at
yourself right away
and didn't get him. He ends up signing a huge deal with the Broncos. So obviously, they want to improve that offensive line as well. But I think it's a weapons league, man. It's a weapons league.
Yeah, I think you trot out. You got 3 weapons out there, and there's a lot to like with that situation. What they pulled off.
My dad. So he's texting me. I go, "Wow, Hargrave. Did the Browns get Hargrave? No, Niners. What? Go on the internet or turn on your TV." That's what I said to him.
It's 2 starters from Philly that are gone, Hargrave and Edwards.
Yeah, and that won't be the last one. It's just, it's hard for them to be able to stay in, on everything that they had. Look, Hargrave, it just didn't make a lot of sense to me as much as we all wanted him. Everybody wants the best player at every position, but the Browns, when you have a quarterback making what Deshaun Watson is making, you don't have the luxury of signing the premium guys. You just don't. So you've got to be judicious. And that's why part of me wonders, what are the Browns going to do with, how are they going to allocate their money? And for example, let's say a guy like Ethan Posick. I would have a hard time believing the Browns would sign Ethan Posick to a pretty big deal, to have Bitonio on a pretty big deal, to have Teller on a pretty big deal, 3 of them on the interior of your offensive line. That just doesn't make sense. Not to mention Conklin, you're going to have to, and then Wills is coming up. So I wonder if do we make a trade there? At some point, the reason you have Bill Callahan and you're making him one of the highest paid position coaches in the NFL is because he's able to take in Ethan Posick, who was before not considered anything, and make him great. Wyatt Teller was not a Pro Bowler until he started working with Bill Callahan. So to me, it feels like that's an area to not spend money and rely on, the Bill Callahan to make guys better than they were.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Mary Kay's going to join us at 2:00. We'll ask her about the Posick stuff, and I like him a lot, but it would have to be at the right deal. Go ahead.
Not Browns breaking news, but affects our division. Former Steeler and a very good cornerback, Cam Sutton, signing 3-year, $33 million deal with the Lions, who I think are going to be pretty good.
Yeah, they're in a position. Two nice picks. They got a lot that they can do. We'll take a look at some of the free agents that are out there for us, see if there's a fit, play a little fit or not a fit. With Dr. Z coming up, you listen to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet, coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Lawyers, serious injuries, call 1-800-ELK-OHIO for a free case review. Elk & Elk's proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. Did you get a good scouting report on Arizona when you were out there on the Cats, the 2 seed?
Nice win over Cats. UCLA in the finals of the Pac-12 tournament.
On the Pac-12.
Yeah. By the way, there is nothing better than Pac-12 tournament basketball with Pash and Bill Walton late at night.
Unbelievable. And Pash is, too, for, like, just playing it straight with him. And
What did you do at halftime?
So much fun.
It was great. Saturday night, like the wife went to bed early.
Yeah.
After the MAC game, I was watching Duke win the ACC title.
Yep.
And that game popped up after, and I'm like, I'm in for a half.
Watch a little of this. Just for it.
Just for the comedy.
And UCLA is a team of. I mean, they have a big injury, but they're certainly a team of consequence. Disclaimer:
Browns not a signing. But Mary Kay, who will join us at 2 o'clock, saying with the defensive tackle, dominoes falling, and Eagles' Javon Hargrave signing with the 49ers, Broncos' Draymond Jones, a Cleveland native, is still in play for the Browns' mutual interest, can see it happening.
Well, that would be good. We've talked about him a lot, so that'd make a lot of sense. I know Tyvis Powell has been pushing for that for 6 months.
Shai Tuttle, former Saints defensive tackle, signed a 3-year deal with the Panthers. 3 years, $19.5 million, 13 guaranteed. I don't know if the Browns,
a Shai Tuttle.
I don't know if they were in on Shai Tuttle or not, but there you go.
Yeah, there you do go. On a Shai Tuttle. That's thank God.
I feel like there's
as the cardiac kid there. Says,
there's some kind
Browns
of
don't want a Shai
Tuttle.
defensive tackle. That's right, cardiac kid.
All right, so you wait on Draymond a little bit, and we'll see where that goes. He was a good player at Ohio State, good player with the Broncos, local kid, so that'd be a win for everybody there. Gibby, yes, the MAC is great. So I want to ask you this real quick. You brought up the MAC game. The Kent State wins it. Why in Toledo? How important is Toledo athletics?
It's
for the
everything.
City. So that's why I was curious. I was curious if that was like the one in the state. Where, like, because, like, Dayton's not that way with Dayton. They like Dayton basketball, but it's still
the
Buckeyes.
Flyers.
You know?
No. It's Toledo is Toledo.
So they haven't been since
they're
1980. They have not been to the tournament since 80.
Yeah.
They've won the MAC the last 3 years in the regular season and have lost.
And their coach decided to go off on a CBS Sports reporter Friday night for asking about the drought. Like, what would it mean? Well, that's a guy's job. And I will just say it's not the first time that guy's gone off the rails on something as minor as that.
How long's he been there?
I don't remember. He was at Wisconsin Green Bay before that.
Okay. All right.
And it's not that he's not successful. They just can't win the championship.
No, and all that matters, unfortunately, like I think that should be a 2-bid league a lot of years.
Yeah.
I think it shouldn't be automatic that they just get one in. I mean, you go 16-2 in that league. They win a game in the tournament every year. I think Kent State's going to beat Indiana.
They can match up with their
sincere
stars.
Carey kid, they can absolutely beat them.
Yeah,
no question.
Guards,
they got guards. They can shoot it.
Toledo had won 17 in a row.
Oh yeah. No, they can beat them.
How about that? We saw a 2 seed. And I know Marquette was ranked high, and obviously they feel like it makes me feel like this is wide open.
It is.
If that is that is a 2 seed.
Right, and they should have been the number 1-2 seed because they're in the same bracket as Purdue. By the way, I like your Dukies coming out of there.
No help with the 5.
Starting to play some D though.
5 seed?
Right, but you play the weakest 4 in Tennessee, who's got the injury.
Yeah, you got to get by the 12.
Yeah,
Oral Roberts is pretty good. That's a scary team.
They got Kansas
for
a couple
me,
of years ago.
Knowing my history with
State.
Duke in the first round and choking.
I think they've got both Kansas and Ohio State. Oral Roberts has in recent years, but I like Duke coming out of there. It is.
I think Marquette could be got by Vermont, the Catamounts.
Could happen.
I think if somebody can.
They had good size, and the guard was good. The guard was really good, and he shot it well. And they had a bunch of 6'8" guys.
I watched a little bit of their.
They can play D.
Yeah,
They're a suffocating defensive team.
Yeah, they are. But yes, we did see them play. So that'll get started on tomorrow night is the first 4, and then the real tournament starts on Thursday. But it was that was fun.
How many people are working on Friday? St. Patty's Day.
Oh my God, it is, isn't it?
NCAA tournament.
It's perfect.
I'll be on a golf course.
Not us. By the way, I looked. I don't believe that we're going to chase the small ball in this state.
Look at Look at Gibby. You are sneaking out of here at the end of this week. Good
He
job
leaves
out of you.
tomorrow.
Are you staying here or you're gone?
No,
Golf
he's
trip?
going
Be in the
Mesquite.
state of Nevada.
Oh, you're going to
He's
there
going to-
again. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that trip for you.
It's gonna be a
So
great
you're
trip.
going to out there. That's a win. Yeah, this is going to be. I mean, isn't St. Patrick's Day a company holiday?
Should be.
Should be.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
said
it's
it,
a
man.
city holiday.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, let's shut it down. What do we
Yeah.
got to do? It's going to be me and you in here Friday anyway.
Yeah.
Just two of us. No one else can be here.
By the way, we're not chasing the small ball in this state until, at least not in this region, and you got nothing until April. No chance between now and April 1st. Literally none.
I think you're being generous.
So
with
much
April
rain
1st.
too. It's so wet.
The 2 days
gonna
that are
be
in the
a muck.
50s are going to be pouring rain, and then
Pouring
other than
rain.
that, we're living in the 30s and 40s until April. Like, there is no reprieve.
Oh my
I
gosh, it really is. Tomorrow's high is 30.
Yes,
with like
dude.
25, 30 mile an hour winds.
That'll
It's
be-
like a significant wind chill.
That's lovely.
Not great.
And then 50s at the end of the week, and then right back down. Yeah, you're gonna have to get into that. Some 50s at the end. Boy, this is a pretty crummy March. Usually get 170.
Yes, you got like
Couple
a
of
few
70s.
couple good days.
So March was it's my birth month. I love March Madness. It was my favorite sporting event as a kid growing up. I always loved Masters at the end of it, like all of it. Love it as a sports month. NBA winding down, so forth, so on. But I will say, since moving to Ohio in 2007, March has probably been my least favorite month because you feel like you've paid your price. I've done my time.
Yeah.
Right? I've done it. I've been through winter. We made it out alive. And then you look at March and you're like, why isn't there a day that's 72? And there just aren't many. Much of it's like this. Not this cold, but it's really 40s, low 50s, 40s. This is even colder than that.
It's awful,
And you're
dude.
just kind of locked in. It might be the worst month.
We used to have, though, I feel like there would be a week in March every year that was like golfable.
Absolutely. I
At
can
least
remember
1 week.
being
And now
on this
there's
golf
nothing.
trip I go on. And
Nothing.
the weather a couple of years ago in Myrtle Beach was 40 degrees and rain, and it was 70 here and sunny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not this time.
No.
And then the amount of precipitation we're getting is just going to make it a mess for a long, long time. The drainage is going to have to be right to get this done. All right, let's play a little fit or not a fit with Dr. C and the Browns free agent fits Draymond Jones.
Obviously, it's a fit. Again,
Clearly.
it just comes down to, do the Browns – it sounds like he's going to be pricey. This defensive tackle market is clearly expensive. Is he that much of a difference maker in their eyes? My guess would be that they're very intrigued, as Mary Kay has reported, and she'll talk with us at the top of the hour. But, yeah, he makes a lot of sense for the Browns. Young guy, wants to come back here, wants to play for the Browns. He's from Cleveland. Played at Ohio State, as we know, 6.5 sacks last year. He's had at least 5.5 sacks in 3 straight seasons. Like, that's a guy that can affect the game for the Browns in the interior from a pass rushing standpoint. So, yes, I think it makes a ton of sense for the Browns. And if not, then you're talking, Fletcher Cox maybe on a 1-year deal while you try to continue to develop your young guys like a Perrion Winfrey, maybe a Sheldon Rankins, maybe Cox and Rankins, for crying out loud. I mean, I don't think anybody in our defensive tackle room right now, other than Perrion, based on his ability. I don't know, he's obviously, we've talked about it, and he knows he needs to mature a little bit as a professional, but from an ability standpoint, I would say he's the only person that's on our roster in that room that you would say is definitely going to be on the roster in 2023. Like, I don't think it's a lock for Jordan Elliott. I don't think it's a lock for Tommy Togiai at all.
No. And I think the one thing that Draymond let me ask you this. Let's play a little fact or fiction.
Okay.
Fact or fiction, Draymond Jones is the only target still out there who would be more than a 1-year deal. Is everybody else old
A
guys
defensive tackle?
at D tackle?
Well, I still think that you could have a DeForest Buckner as a target. So
that's via trade.
via
though.
trade.
But
You're
in
talking
terms of
pure
like
free
true free
agency?
agents, everybody else are most of the rest of them all one and done guys.
Possibly.
Jones could be like a 3-year guy where he could be around and
I think
you
that,
hope.
I think, Sheldon Rankins is, let's see, he's 28. So he's somebody that could maybe be a little bit of a, he could be a couple-year guy. But, yeah, I mean, in terms of somebody that has a chance to come in here and be somewhat of a building block for you, I think that he would be he's the top of the list, I would imagine, at this point.
Jesse Bates, fit or not a fit?
Of course, a fit, good center field, free safety, but I think that I don't think, and I'd be happy to be wrong about it, by the way, but I don't believe there's a world in which you get Draymond Jones and you get Jesse Bates. I think you're going to have to be more judicious with your funds.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes hard for fans to understand, but like we've paid all of our really good players.
Right.
So there's not that kind of money bouncing around. Jordan Poyer, fit, not a fit.
I mean, I would love him. He's kind of more he can play that true free safety. He's got a nose for the ball. He had 4 picks in limited action this year as a first-team All-Pro 2 years ago. I love him. I think he would be great. I think he'd be I would love Jordan Poyer. I think that he is more, as he continues to age, is probably a little bit more closer to the box than necessarily a true center fielder.
Garofalo with this. The Raiders closing in on a deal with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's on his way to Vegas.
Jimmy Vegas.
To reunite with Josh McDaniels.
Jimmy Vegas. Yeah, Poyer's 32. Poyer's going to be
so
32 when the season starts, so that's probably not.
McCole Hardman, fit or not a fit?
Absolutely a fit. And I think you can get him at a discounted rate, 1-year prove-it deal with a ton of speed. He was very productive for Kansas City last year before he got hurt. I think that would be – I like that. I mean, there are receivers that I like more than McCole Hardman. I think he's a little limited as a receiver, but in terms of speed, vertically, horizontally, stretching the field, all those things, he would give that to you. And because he's coming off an injury, you'd get him for less than you would otherwise.
Yeah. Brandon Cooks.
Absolutely. Yes. Knows Watson, has played with Watson, has had success with Watson. Absolutely. Yes. But that's a trade.
Right. Yeah. You'd have to do that there. Paris Campbell.
When I watched Paris Campbell, the speed's there, but he's kind of like a running back.
He is.
They
like
throw
him.
him.
They ran.
It's
He was
all
best at
bubble
Ohio
screens
State
and-
in the slot, like run jet sweeps and quick hitters. He
Right.
get deep too, but like it wasn't like it was different than. I'd like him because he's a weapon, and if you can get him at a nice price, give me all the weapons I can get.
Sure.
But I don't know that he's like plug and play. We need somebody top off the defense.
He doesn't
guy.
address that.
I don't think he's that. No.
Agreed.
Even though he's got great speed. I mean, he does. He's just not that. He's not that type of player. He's more of a. He's just a weapon.
Yep.
So, all right, there you go. So, some stuff starting to trickle in here. The league is being certainly, to a certain extent, at the quarterback position, although you've seen the Raiders move on. You're waiting on Rodgers, and then you're waiting on anything with Lamar.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the other thing that's out there is the Lamar stuff. So, Fowler had the report yesterday that no NFL team is going to make an offer on Lamar. And people are quick to talk about the collusion with it, and I do think there's probably some message that's being sent in terms of guaranteed money and such. But I think another part of it that's maybe not talked about enough is if you go after him, you alienate the rest of your room. So we saw this with Matt Ryan. So if you have a young guy that maybe you sort of believe in, but you want to take a swing. And the other thing with Lamar is it's almost like you couldn't offer him a deal unless you had already spoken to the Ravens and said, are you guys going to match this?
Yep.
Like it's almost like you have to work, and he doesn't have an agent.
Nope.
So it's not like you can like go to
Back
the agent
channels,
and back channel it. Like you have to go directly to him and directly to the Ravens. Like it would be easy, for example, if the Falcons are the team that makes the most sense. You give up 2 number ones, you get Lamar Jackson, you give him $200 million guaranteed on a 4-year deal. I'm sure the Falcons would do that tomorrow. But the problem is they don't know if Baltimore would match it. So now you've let it be known, if you believe in Desmond Ridder a little bit even, that you were looking to find somebody to replace him. All the while, all of your work on a contract is out the window because Baltimore just matched it.
Right, you're basically negotiating it for them. It is a tough situation, which
tough
is why
spot.
they put it in there. But they're also, I would say, likely to upset, Lamar in this. It's a messy situation. The fact, though, that we live in a league where you're willing to give $40+ million a year to Daniel Jones and not Lamar Jackson, who's been the MVP of the league, to me is insane.
Agreed.
It's crazy.
It is. Yeah. But
Did you read the Charles Robinson article, by the way, last week,
I don't think
where
I
he
did.
talked with 3 agents about the Lamar situation, and they said basically if he had agents, this would not have happened. It wouldn't have gotten to this point because they would have been able to do all the negotiating for him with every other team, and he would know exactly where he stood. Now, and part of the problem is they're saying, yeah, he has lawyers who are helping him, but those are not people that have the connections that the top agents in the business have, where they can call up a general manager or call up an owner. That's one of the points the guy made is that you're talking about ownership level stuff.
Yeah.
With a
$200
franchise
million
quarterback.
bucks, yeah.
Right. So he doesn't have that access. So he's kind of, in some ways, he's like a pilot flying, without instruments, right? He's flying blind a little bit, and I think that makes this whole situation much, much tougher.
Yeah, it's an absolutely brutal spot, and it's I mean the juxtaposition of Daniel Jones getting what he got and Lamar Jackson can't, but it's also the spot that they're in that's allowed for it. I mean the Ravens now it's a hell of a gamble. I guess they're banking on if they do re-sign him or they do match that John Harbaugh, who's played kind of the good cop to DeCosta's bad cop in this the whole time, that he can massage through it. But it feels like a lot to try to massage through.
Well, it's a $13 million difference in the tag.
Right.
Like, I can't imagine that he wants to come back and play for that. I mean, it goes back to the Daniel Jones, and I get, like, those are two different situations. They are. I mean, Daniel Jones, like, what else are you going to do if you're the Giants? And it's not an awful contract. Same with the Geno Smith one. They're not awful contracts. I don't know if I would have done it, but if that's the only guy that you have, then that's what you have to work with. But the whole Lamar thing, it's him not having an agent is truly hurting this process for him.
No doubt.
It's crippled him. And it's allowed for hurt feelings, probably.
Totally.
Because now you have to say the tough part to him directly or to an attorney as opposed to an agent who can massage it.
Yes.
So
and the agent could be the bad guy. Garoppolo, by the way, getting 3 years, $67.5 million, including $34 million guaranteed from the Raiders. So that's an average of basically 22.5 a year. I think it now becomes a lock that quarterbacks go 1 and 2 in the draft because Houston had been reportedly interested in Garoppolo. That's not happening now.
I think the most interesting spot in the draft now is 3. It's Arizona, because you still have there are other teams who could now come up to 3 and try to get the quarterback.
Yep.
And to keep him out of the Colts. So the Colts now are in a position where everyone thought they were going to 1 with the Bears and get the quarterback that they want. Now they might get the 4th quarterback. So that Arizona spot has a lot of value. Houston's going to stand pat. Everything last week, it felt like the Carolina did it for Stroud, was kind of the feeling last week around the league that it was a Stroud move. Houston would then theoretically be able to sit and get the guy they want all along, Young.
Yep.
And then that would leave that 3rd spot with Arizona, choosing between Levis and Richardson. But I think it's very likely that by the time we get to the draft, it's quarterback 1 through 4.
So you think Arizona will move out?
I would if I were them. I think they're in a hell of a position to.
Yeah.
Do you take a quarterback if you're Arizona?
No.
Tell you what, anecdotally, there is no love for Kyler Murray based on a couple of the Uber drivers that we had.
See?
They
hate
him down there.
It's such an apathetic franchise, too. Like the weather's great. Like, okay, Cardinals are good, bad, whatever. Like, ownership's not great. Like, it just kind of is.
It's just such an elite place to be.
It is, but it's like all of those elite places. Like, they're not there's so many things to do. I'm not going to get bogged down by a football team. It's 72 degrees in February. What do I care?
I'm playing Troon.
I'm doing just fine. I'm not dealing with it.
Beautiful.
Mary Kay going to join us coming up at the top of the hour. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Bally Bet, coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Renew your home for the last time with Renew Home Exteriors Siding and Roofing products. Don't spend all day with high-pressure sales guys. The team at Renew Home Exteriors won't waste your day with hours of negotiating the price of your project. They'll just give you an upfront, fair price to make your project easy. Modernize your home with premium siding ranging in every style and color. Renew Home Exteriors, superior products, superior service. Visit RenewEstimate.com for more. As we head out on the Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea Hotline, official sponsor of your Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. The great Mary Kay Cabot at Cleveland.com joins us. Mary Kay, thank you so much for taking the time. We're a couple hours into this thing. Is there anything from a Browns perspective that's noteworthy to you other than the Watson restructure in terms of guys going elsewhere that you think maybe they were in on?
Well, the thing that I'm focusing on right now at the moment is the defensive tackle market is starting to fall. The dominoes are starting to fall. Javon Hargrave signed that blockbuster deal with the 49ers. So it's starting to happen, and I think that they are still firmly in the mix for Draymond Jones. And I think that's really exciting for the Cleveland Browns and for Browns fans. So, it's something that I actually could see happening. There are a lot of other teams interested in him, but I think it's something that has a decent chance of happening.
Talk with Mary Kay Cabot. Mary Kay, you mentioned Draymond Jones, coming in. What would kind of the vision be for him? And then if they don't get him, is DeForest Buckner, that's another name I've seen thrown around as a potential trade target. Is that somebody that the Browns could be interested in?
They might be interested in him, but in my dealings in terms of DeForest Buckner, I just have kept hearing that they don't think that my sources tell me that they don't think that the Colts will be willing to deal with him.
Yep.
So I just don't know. I mean, he's their best defensive player. I just don't know if that has a realistic chance of happening. But in terms of Draymond Jones,
yep.
I mean, you're getting really two defensive linemen for the price of one. If you can land him, you've got a tackle, you've got an end, you've got someone that I think has tremendous upside potential. He had 6.5 sacks last season, missed the last 4 games. So I think he's a double-digit sacker. I think that he would flourish in Jim Schwartz's scheme, and I think it just would be a dynamite signing for the Browns.
Well, and the other thing about him is, and I knew him from Ohio State, but I mean, he was a great player there. He's a local kid, and it feels like there's mutual affection. Are you hearing that as well?
Oh yeah, I got to talk to Draymond on the phone on Saturday. He was nice enough to jump on the phone with me. I mean, I think that even tells you something about a player's character, that he's willing to do an interview like that with his hometown news outlet. I thought that was pretty cool. So he did that. He talked about how excited he would be to come back home, how his whole entire family would be over the moon about this. He did emphasize that he's open to any team. He's open to going back to the Broncos, but it really would be cool for him to come back to the land.
If, Draymond Jones, it's a bidder's market and the Browns, have their limits of what they can pay. If it's not Draymond Jones, who are some other names we should keep an eye on for the Browns at defensive tackle?
Yeah, it starts to get a little dicey. You've got Dalvin Tomlinson is still out there, but you're going to start to run out of the kind of quality prospects that you're really going to be looking for. Zach Allen is still out there. David Onyemata signed with the Falcons today. Yep. So as I mentioned, it could start to be kind of slim pickings if you don't get the guy that you want. So, hopefully for Browns fans and for Draymond that they're hot and heavy in these talks right now, and they'll, come up with something soon.
When you look at that defensive tackle position, we've covered that. Sounds like Draymond Jones is the guy that the Browns are targeting, and hopefully something can happen imminently. What other positions are the Browns active in, and what names are you hearing, perhaps either at wide receiver or at safety?
Well, I was a little bit surprised that they went out to Odell Beckham Jr.'s workout. Mm-hmm. But as I've done more due diligence on that, I've come to realize that they were serious about that. This wasn't just something that they were going out there to, update their free agent list. So, they have remained in close contact with him. He wants to come back here and play with Deshaun. So I just wouldn't rule it out. He's looking probably for a lot of money right now. So I don't know if that will happen. I actually think that Elijah Moore from the Jets, if they're still willing to deal him, of course they're still working on their quarterback situation, but if they're willing to move him, he's somebody that has, I think, a lot of potential to really flourish with a Deshaun Watson, and you can get him, at a lot less money than probably, some of these other veterans. So, he's somebody else that I would look at. Brandon Cooks, I still would look at Brandon Cooks as a trade option because, he's got that natural chemistry with Deshaun. Those guys would want to play with each other, and you need someone that Deshaun can feel real super comfortable with when he's out there scrambling around and trying to find his guy. He would have that natural fit with Brandon.
And just a quick bit of breaking news. Ian Rappaport, the Texans expected to sign former Patriots and Browns pass rusher Chase Winovich, a source saying so. So Chase Winovich reportedly headed to Houston on that. So that speaks to and this isn't just we talk so much about the interior, Mary Kay, but it's end too. I mean, they've got a lot of bodies that need to come into that room, and I think one thing that it's a little tricky because for the last 5 years or so, when the Browns go to free agency, like they have a checklist, then they go get the guys that check those boxes, but hamstrung a little bit in that the Browns are paying a lot of their best players. And so while you do a restructure with Watson, and I guess I'll start there, do you think that more restructures could be on the way with other veterans who are highly paid on this roster?
It just all depends on what they need. If they need to clear more space and they come up with an opportunity to acquire someone that they didn't necessarily envision right at the outset, then they will go ahead and dig into another contract and find some money and convert some signing bonus. And it's a win-win for the player because, who doesn't want to get handed, an extra $10 million up front that you didn't know you were going to get right away. So it's not something that is going to be hard to do in the event they need to do it. I just think it will be dependent on what comes available to them.
Talk with Mary Kay Cabot. Mary Kay, do you expect the Browns to get, multiple things done here before the start of the new league year, or do you think it's kind of be a slower process?
I think they probably will get at least one or two things done that they want to accomplish. I think they're getting pretty close to re-signing Ethan Posick, which didn't seem like that was going to happen when free agency started. So now that looks like a pretty good bet. I believe they'll do that. And then,
Mary Kay, can I just jump in real quick? Well, you mentioned Posick. Yeah. Is this going to be a long-term deal? Is this a short-term deal? Because the Browns already have so much money invested on the interior of that offensive line. What's kind of your thought with having Bill Callahan find the next Ethan Posick or a guard, something like that, as opposed to having three veterans on the interior all on, second contracts? What's that Posick one looking like from what you're hearing?
I'm not 100% certain. I would have to think that they might end up doing a multi-year deal because he can probably get that from someone else. So I don't know that he would necessarily want to do the one-year deal, although it would give him an opportunity to hit free agency again next year in a less depressed center market. So there could be some incentive to do that. But whatever the case may be, I just think that there is a really good chance that he will be back here, and that's a great way to start off free agency because they did not think that they were going to have him. And I think it's important for them to have that center position locked up with a really good player.
Mary Kay, from a checklist standpoint, obviously D tackle at the very, very top of that priority. D ends there. Free safety, got to have that now. That's got to get in the mix. And then Nathan and I are pretty adamant, speed receiver, weapons on offense. What would be your pecking order on that, and where do you think the most likelihood of those issues being solved is? Is it draft, free agency, trade? How are those issues going to get sorted out? Because I think, quite frankly, all of them need to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to rank them because they really need all of them. But, I think you can get a defensive tackle in free agency, maybe even a defensive end in free agency. I've mentioned Yannick. I don't know if he's really high on their list or not, but he can get you the sacks, and that's what they really need. Yeah. And, in terms of the receiver market, I actually think that you might have better luck in a trade for a receiver than trying to find one in free agency where you're really going to overpay. So, so I think, I would be looking in the trade market, as I mentioned, like an Elijah Moore, who they've kind of had their eye on a little bit back last year when he was disgruntled and wanted to be traded by the Jets. So that's somebody I would look at. But in terms of what you need, I think the speedy receiver, in my mind, is just as important as these defensive guys. So I've got them all ranked right all across the board next to each other.
Yeah.
What's the latest with Jesse Bates, or what are you expecting at the free safety spot?
Yeah, Jesse Bates has a lot of teams interested in him. You hear about him, things heating up a little bit with him and, and the Falcons and some other teams. So I don't know if they're going to be able to land him or not. That could be another thing that they're hot and heavy talking about right now because, as you know, he shares an agent with Deshaun Watson. So they've got a great open relationship with David Mulugeta. That's something that you can let them go out and see what else they can get. And then maybe he calls them back and says, hey, here's what we have. Before you do anything, give us a call back. So, that's something I think that you need to keep an eye on. And if they don't get him, there are several other safeties that you can look at. C.J. Gardner-Johnson from the Eagles, he does a lot. I mean, he had 6 interceptions and he didn't even play. I can't even remember. He missed like 3 games or something like that, or the last 3 or 4 games. But he tackles really well. He had 61 solo tackles last year. He's somebody that I think brings a lot of fire there in the back end. So I wouldn't rule him out either. It's a pretty decent safety market.
Is there a name out there that we haven't really heard much about that Browns fans should keep an eye on or do some learning about?
I really don't have anybody like that on my list right now. I've pretty much have been kind of saying everything and writing everything that I know. So, yeah, at this point, no. But I will say I am sure that they have some of those sleeper guys that they have been looking into. And, they could sign one of those guys at any given time. And I just wouldn't be surprised. They've probably got 3 or 4 guys that they've been looking at that, that we haven't really put out there yet.
Mary Kay, great stuff. Thank you so much for your time. Dialed in as always and greatly appreciated on a busy day.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
All right, that's Mary Kay Cabot, Cleveland.com, joining on the Twisted Tea Hotline, brought to you by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, official sponsor of your Cleveland Browns. Winovich, to any surprising there on that?
No, he reunites with Nick Caserio, who obviously must have liked him from their time in New England when he was drafted in the 3rd round. If you don't remember, he had a great game against Houston. He had that pressure tip that led to the pick 6 for Tony Fields. I like him. I'm going to miss him. He's a great interview, great guy to have around the building. I'm going to miss Chase Winovich. I wish him well. Houston also bringing in Case Keenum for his 3rd stint with the Texans as well. It just feels like the Texans, if you played for the Browns at some point, you'll end up playing for the Texans.
It does. There's a lot
Stewart
of that.
is back with them. They had Kirko for all those years. Money Mitch was there for a while. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, a lot of familiar faces, certainly, when you see them. So there's starting to be some moves here trickle in the last couple hours. Seems like every 5 minutes or so there's one of note.
Yep.
We'll keep you posted on all of that. You'll hear from our special teams coordinator, Bubba Ventrone, coming up next. And then Ben Allbright going to join us at the bottom of the hour. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Cheer on your Cleveland Browns with help of your favorite four-legged companion, Barking Backers, presented by Milkbone, the Browns' newest club for pet parents worldwide. Sign up today at barkingbackers.com. Barking Backers, the fan club for dogs. This goes back to Thursday. Special teams coordinator Bubba Ventrone at the podium. Let's have a listen.
Hey, Bubba, welcome back. Just wondering, when you've looked over so far the Browns special teams,
you guys are down.
Of Cade York, what do you think of his upside as you look to the 2023 season, and what else kind of gets you excited about what you have and what Browns fans are going to see on your special teams this coming season?
Sure. I'll start with Cade's first. It's not too often that you get to actually coach a guy that you rank coming out of college at the highest at that position. So last year, grading, all the specialists, the kickers, the punters, I had Cade at the highest. I'm fortunate to be able to coach him this year. So I think that, he obviously can improve, and we're going to just coach him up, and we're going to be, as good as we can in the kicking phase. I would say as far as the core group, it's a talented group overall. I see a lot of upside here, both as, with the ball handlers we have currently on the roster, and, I would say the guys that are, contributing in the big four phases, coverage units, and in the blocking phases. So I'm excited to work with this group.
Hey, Bubba, welcome back to Cleveland. How has your experience as a player, being a core special teamer, made you a better coach?
Like I said earlier, I feel like I have a good understanding of the techniques that are played within the scheme. I've actually done it, in my career. That's all I did, really. So I feel like I have maybe a little bit more insight to, I would say, maybe the true, intricacies of the techniques. I'm a big, and we will drill it to death, is the fundamentals of the game. Footwork, hat placement, playing with the base. I'm going to emphasize that ad nauseum to our players, and ultimately that's going to get us the best results. You can't do anything unless you have good fundamentals and technique, and that starts, from day one.
And the rules these days seem to tilt the game against punt and kick returns, but your units have been really successful in that area. Can you maybe explain why that is? Does it just simply come down to technique and teaching technique?
Yeah, this past year we had a young group in Indianapolis. We drilled the crap out of their footwork on kickoff return and our drops. We ended up leading the league in kickoff return because we executed our techniques well, and we ran basic returns the entire season. I feel like the same, parallels show up whenever you're talking through the punt unit. Good footwork. You can handle any type of rush in protection as long as you have those fundamentals and technique to be able to allow you to, see those different types of exotic looks.
Hey, Bubba, what would you say are your most vivid and or favorite memories of the time you spent in Cleveland?
What's up, Scott?
How's it going?
Most vivid memory. Just talked about this with Chad O'Shea as I was walking down the stairs. Is beating New England in 2010. Yeah, we beat them up pretty good. I know that's obviously a really hard team to play against every season. So it was a big win in that game. I remember I recovered a fumble off a muff kick in that game.
Yeah, well, as long as we're talking about the Patriots, I'm sure it's a ton, but what are a couple things from being around Coach Belichick so long that you apply in your role?
So, I credit Bill a huge amount to everything that I've had, the success that I've had. He actually texted me this morning to congratulate me on the job. Bill really has given me my foundation for learning the kicking game. He and Brad Seeley both have a huge influence in the things that I do, and how I coach the game, how I call the game, how I see the game, and they've just given me a lot of insight and direction and opportunity. Bill gave me opportunities as a player and as a coach, as did Brad. So I'm going to use everything that I've learned from them, and hopefully make this group one that we can be proud of.
Hey, Bubba, nice to meet you. I had another Cade York question. I know Cade is kind of a self-described perfectionist. He talked about maybe getting too hung up on his technique later in the season with some of his misses last year. So I'm wondering just what it's like to work with a player that has that personality type that wants to be perfect at that specific position.
Yeah, the kicking position, I feel like the best guys, the guys that are the most successful, the best kickers, I've been around quite a bit, Phil Dawson, Vinatieri, Gostkowski, the guys that I've coached in, in Indianapolis. Chase this past year had a good year. Badgley. Those guys have done a good job of putting, misses to bed, moving on, not being so caught up in missing.
Just hit 5 minutes.
Make the correction and then move on to the next kick. So, I haven't had a chance to sit down and actually meet with Cade, but that'll be one of the things that I'm going to influence for him.
Hey, Bubba, you obviously played it. You've coached it. What makes a great special teams player?
I'd say the traits that you look for in special teams players, you want to have aggressive, tough, smart, disciplined players, that understand how the game is being officiated and how the game needs to be played. The kicking game is completely different than any other facet of the game, offense and defense. It's extremely different than the college kicking game, which is completely different overall. So when these young players come into the NFL, they really have no idea what they're getting themselves into. So
30 until 6/19.
That goes along, and that's why those meetings in the spring and then into training camp, into the season are so important, especially for those young players, because they're getting taught all these new techniques that they've never seen before or never even have experienced at all in their careers. And while they're trying to still, learn the offensive playbook, the defensive playbook, and now they're learning a completely different facet of the game in the kicking game. So, those are the things I look at.
You guys are up.
All right, good stuff with Bubba Ventrone. That's from his introductory press conference last week, on Thursday.
And we should have him in the studio
hopefully
soon.
Be nice to have him in here. Have a little chat. Always good to have a chat with our good buddy Benjamin Allbright. He joins us coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet. Coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Get a Cleveland Browns Daily brought to you by Ballybet. Coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Time to head on that Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea Hotline, official sponsor of your Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. Our great friend, one of the best NFL insiders you'll find, radio host KOA in Denver, Benjamin Allbright, joins us. Well, we're, 2.5 hours into this thing. Anything surprising for you so far before we get into some of the specifics?
I think it's surprising to the league, or to fans of the league, rather, as a whole, how much interior offensive linemen and interior defensive linemen seem to be getting on the open market thus far, and that's a bit of a course correction from previous years. So it's interesting to see the big money that's getting handed out on the interior lines right now.
All right, let's talk about the Broncos. They've made some moves. Big one at tackle, brought in a backup quarterback as well. What's kind of your take on those moves for Sean Payton? And then also, what can you tell us about the reporting that they could be moving a wide receiver?
Well, let's start with the signings. Mike McGlinchey at right tackle, Ben Powers at left guard.
Yep.
I think both are good signings. I don't know that they necessarily may have overpaid a little for McGlinchey, but they sort of had to because the Chicago Bears were also in the market there. I think both go to help fix a line that was charitably in flux last year, and hopefully that'll shore it up. They still got some work to do. The center position isn't where it needs to be, and left tackle with Garrett Bowles, they may ride with that another year, but eventually they're going to have to figure out something there. In terms of Jarrett Stidham, I think that speaks a lot about Russell Wilson. Russ is on a one-year audition, and that's not to say that Stidham is going to be a starter, a surefire starter, but he certainly has experience, and that puts Russ on the button. You're on a one-year audition for Sean Payton, and honestly, you don't make it that far, they might punt. So that says that. As far as the kind of the rest of it goes and where this team stands, I mean, it's firmly in Sean Payton's control now.
And the reports on the receivers, Ben, that they could be willing to move one, are you aligned with that as well, that they could move off one of those guys?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Specifically Cortland Sutton. They're shopping him pretty hard. Jerry Jeudy, I doubt it. For the right price, maybe they get a big enough price tag. KJ Hamler could probably be had. But I think Tim Patrick and Jerry Jeudy are probably staying. The rest of them, they're shopping pretty hard. We knew that back at the Combine. And, I run into Matt Berry and talked to him a little bit about it and all that kind of stuff. So.
What do you think of Draymond Jones? A lot of talk about the Browns and Draymond Jones. He was with the Broncos last year, 6.5 sacks, obviously a productive player from Cleveland. Is that one of the things that you're hearing, and anything else about the Browns?
Well, yes. I think Draymond is squarely in the Browns' sights. I think they're I don't know if I want to say front runner, but certainly out there out front. He wants to be in Denver. I just don't think the economics of the situation work. You look at the other teams that be involved in this, obviously Chicago Bears, you guys, and then, I don't know that I've put it out there before. I tried to hint at it with a Carmine Falcone graphic, but the Atlanta Falcons as well. They are all in pursuit of Draymond Jones. I think he's going to get paid. So if you're not willing to pay close to 18 to 20 million per, then wow. then I would suggest being out of that. But he's going to get paid, and I would not be surprised at all to see Cleveland be the one to do it.
So we obviously familiar with him a great deal from his time at Ohio State, and he's a local kid as well. In terms of what he was on the field in Denver and justifying that $18 to $20 million price tag, where does that all align?
Well, let's start with the off-field. There's nothing. He's, pretty squeaky clean guy, nice guy. He's a fun interview. You guys are going to have fun if he does sign up there. Have fun talking to him. Real dry wit. On the field, the production comes in bunches. And part of that has been the scheme that he's been in, where he's been asked to play slightly out of position at times. He beat up on guys that were significantly less talented than him. The bulk of his sacks and his sack total stuff came against, the Jets, the Colts, the Jags, teams like that didn't exactly have great offensive line play going on. He didn't have a lot of talent around him rushing the passer, and in the previous scheme that he was in, they weren't really concerned with sending a lot of pressure at any given time. I think if he can find a scheme where they are doing that, and he's got talent around him to be able to do that, I think he'll be better. He's very good at getting pressure, but he's more along the lines of a pass rusher. I think the weakness to his game would be, sitting there and making sure you've got gap contained in the run game. But definitely an upfield pass rusher and definitely gets production.
So that would be what Jim Schwartz wants out of that position. I think ultimately the Browns probably will add a bigger body next to him, somebody they can either find in the draft later on or in free agency on like a cheaper one-year deal in that defensive tackle room. Beyond Draymond, are there any defensive tackles that you're hearing also linked to the Browns, or just anybody else that you've heard kind of on the Browns' radar at this point?
Not at the moment. Obviously, the big name, already went, and then you've got, some other guys that have been kicking around there. I don't think that, you guys are obviously familiar with Sheldon Rankins. That's not going to happen. So, I think that in terms of focus and who's out there in the premier level in the A and B tiers of defensive tackles, Draymond seems to be the one you would have circled as the best scheme fit for Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, he certainly would. As we take a step back and look at the league from a bigger picture, and in your own division, the Raiders going with Jimmy Garoppolo. He gets reunited with Josh McDaniels, who, of course, was in Denver previously. When you think about what has happened at the top of the draft, even with the Bears trading out and going with Carolina, how do you see all this quarterback roulette playing out here over the next couple of weeks?
Well, I think that, there's two dominoes out there that are kind of interesting, and that's Aaron Rodgers and him making the Jets wait on that decision, and then Lamar Jackson. I think everybody freaking out over people not offering Lamar a contract just yet, need to chill out. It's like the first week. They've got plenty of time, and Baltimore can match anything that they put out there. So a lot of these teams are hanging on to their money and waiting to see how some of this stuff shakes out. At the top of the draft, Carolina moving up, it's going to put C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, and Anthony Richardson firmly out of reach of just most teams. And then Will Levis, right there as well. You could, you potentially have by the Raiders pick, but that's about it. So if you want to get up there and get a quarterback, you need to trade with the Arizona Cardinals now, because those quarterbacks are going to be gone. And all four of those guys are going to be gone in the top 10. So.
Yeah, I think they could all be gone in the top 5 by the time this is all said and done, Ben. You mentioned Rodgers. It felt like the Jets thing. I remember talking to you at the comment, like, well, this could get done soon with the Jets. Maybe by the weekend we all thought that was pretty common, and now we're still sitting here waiting on this. It does feel like it's Jets to retirement, I guess. What's taking so long?
Well, and those are the options. Jets are retirement. The Packers don't want him back, and I think he's kind of starting to realize that. I was told, and I can't confirm this is unsubstantiated rumor stuff, but I was told that there's a mechanism in his contract about a bonus that he needed to wait for a certain date, and so that's sort of what was going on. Now, I'm not 100 on that, so again, that's I want to make sure everybody knows that's speculation, but that was told to me by somebody who I think would be in a position to know the details of that contract. So from what I understand, I think that's it. I do believe he's going to the Jets, but at this point in time, sitting there making those players wait over there in New York, telling them you're all in and making them wait, make them think you're not, and then you're going to go and inherit a locker room. It's like, well, is this guy all about himself? So that's something. I certainly know what it's like to sit there through the Aaron Rodgers drama and wait on him and have him not show. So I can definitely get that.
Ben, we've heard that Elijah Moore, a very talented receiver of the Jets who was a little unhappy last year, somebody who could maybe be on the move. It would make sense to me if you were getting Aaron Rodgers that you would want to keep all of your weapons there. Are you hearing anything about Elijah Moore?
I've heard stuff about Corey Davis. I really hadn't heard a whole heck of a lot about Elijah Moore, so I couldn't confirm that. It's of interest to me how much dissatisfaction Jets receivers have had over the last few years. They all want to get over there, they sign contracts there, and then they want out practically immediately. So something to kind of keep your eye on there.
Is there you mentioned the Lamar Jackson thing, how it's not the trick. It's such a tricky thing because Baltimore can match anything at any point, and so they're almost the league's negotiating the contract for them. But at the same point, there is a human element to this, and there's a lot that's been played out publicly between him and the Ravens. Do you think that there is a path back for him in Baltimore, despite all of this?
Yeah, there's always, money cures all, right? Money and winning cures all. So, I think there's a path back. I just think that it's tough right now because the Ravens have repeatedly gone out of their way to say, look, we don't think you're worth 5 years, $250 fully guaranteed. We just don't. We don't care what Cleveland did with Watson. We don't think you're worth that. And so, they're like, okay, well, we've come to a stalemate. We're throwing the tag and the transition tag out here. We'll let the market set the market. Well, now you've got a bunch of teams that aren't, that know that Baltimore can match. So they're not going to sit there and help Baltimore out by trying to do that. So, I think it's a tough situation right now. I think it gets worse before it gets better, but I think it can get better.
Do you think that if Lamar had an agent, one of the high-powered agents that, I don't know if you read the Charles Robinson article, but it felt like they made a pretty compelling case that having an agent to actually be talking directly to the other owners would have allowed him to really understand his market value better than the situation he's found himself in now.
Oh, 100%, absolutely. I get that players are trying to save money, and the maximum an agent can charge in the NFL is 3% of the total deal, right? Yeah. Most of them don't charge that, especially the big guys. They undercut each other, and you're down about 1%. But the value that an agent brings is just worth it. They can do things you can't do. They can back channel things, work deals, get different guys on the line and bidding against themselves. And these are things that just Lamar's just not capable, doesn't understand the business aspect of the game and how the stuff is played out. So it is a mistake for a player in the modern NFL to go without an agent, even if you're trying to learn the ropes and become one. Shadow your own agent and become one later.
Yeah, it just seems like a no-brainer, and it's hard to find a path for it, which quite frankly is fine. What do you make of this Eckler story today, by the way? Speaking of your division that you're familiar with, him wanting a trade out of L.A.
Well, I mean, he does. I don't think he recognizes that he's probably not the best fit for the new offense. He's kind of tired of the situation with, working behind a subpar offensive line and creating stuff out of nothing. I think he recognizes that his value could best be used elsewhere. The problem is with the contract that he's on, getting a trade somewhere else is going to be an extremely limited market. And so it's going to be tough for them to actually work out a deal as far as that kind of stuff goes. That's another one. We talked about Jets receivers being disgruntled. Chargers running backs being disgruntled has sort of been a thing. Melvin Gordon managed to finally get his way out of there, and obviously he was in Denver and then Kansas City. Eckler going to be the next one to force his way out of there, and so it's just going to be tough because that market they can absorb the contract, afford to trade the picks, and has the need for that kind of running back is fairly limited.
It's going to be interesting because he is a talented player. I mean, obviously, when you can score touchdowns at the rate that he has and, lead the league in receptions, yards, and receiving touchdowns as a running back, he can help somebody. But you're right, that's an interesting one. We're just hoping that he stays. Send him to the NFC. That's fine. I like Eckler. I always thought he was a very talented guy. All right, anything else you're hearing? Just kind of big picture, doesn't have to involve the Browns at all. Anything interesting that you're hearing right now?
A lot of teams are holding their money. Teams you would think would be out there spending are holding their money right now, looking for value, kind of wave 2, wave 3 type free agency stuff. Yep. So it's interesting. I mean, even though the Bears were committed to the offensive line, they're kind of holding back on the money right now. So it's interesting to see the teams that have big money available to them aren't necessarily out there spending.
Let me throw one name at you and see if what you've heard on him, McCole Hardman.
Yeah, there's a couple teams out there that are interested. From what I understand, most of the teams that have been out there interested haven't been teams he necessarily wanted to go to, a la Houston.
Yeah.
But there was a mention of the Browns in there. I don't know how serious that is, but getting that straight line speed out there, it does help. It dictates coverages, and I always say how valuable that is.
Yeah, it is. Always great talking to you, bud.
Yes.
Thanks so much for your time, as always.
Absolutely, guys. Take care.
All right, that's NFL Insider, host of KOA in Denver, Benjamin Allbright, joining us on the Twisted Tea Hotline, brought to you by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, an official sponsor of the Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. It does feel like it has slowed, that there was a flurry there right around noon that lasted, I don't know, about an hour and a half, and now it seems like it's quieted a little bit. And we did get the Sione Takitaki deal done, reportedly.
By Mary Kay. Well, she said in the next few days it should get done. 1 year, $2.5 million for Talk to come back.
And Talks, that makes me very happy.
It makes me happy for him. I just wonder when he's going to be ready to play.
Yeah, legitimate. I mean,
I'd like
when did that
Anthony
injury?
Walker back
is
as
that?
Well.
When did he get hurt? Was that
Houston?
Is that December?
It was Houston. It was Watson's first game.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So that's a.
It was certain. I mean, there were 6 games. That was our 12th game of the year.
Yeah.
So yeah, late. That'll be interesting to see. I'd love to see Anthony Walker come back too, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, would love to. I'll tell you, it doesn't. I think Ben said this in the interview. Like it's not as fast and furious as I think people thought it would be.
Yeah. Well, and I think I think we kind of go through that every year. You get all this excitement about free agency, and then there's an initial wave, and then things kind of sort out over the next few days and weeks. And the best values come on not day one guys. Day one guys come at a huge premium, and it's not often that those things work out. Is the truth of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do, But sometimes they don't. And some, for example, a guy like Chandler Jones, you send him to where he'd been so productive in Arizona and New England before that. He goes to the Raiders. He's opposite Max Crosby. They're going to be elected. And he just had a down year. I mean, it's just free agency is hard. How people fit with schemes sometimes can be difficult. But you've got holes and they've got to be addressed through a combination of, in this case for the Browns, a combination of free agency, the draft, and maybe some trades. And that's where Andrew Berry's been so good. And even John Dorsey before him is in the trade market.
You surprised the Garoppolo. What are the Raiders doing?
That they're not tanking, because obviously Garoppolo's. Yeah. I mean, I don't think you can tank when you've got Devontae Adams and Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow and Josh Jacobs. Can you? I mean, that feels like a team that isn't tanking. It feels like a team that feels offensively as though they can compete.
So I guess they clearly view Garoppolo as an upgrade over Carr.
Or at least a net neutral, and he's $10 million a year cheaper.
$10 million cheaper, so they can try to add some other things.
Right.
Yeah. Because you're not a contender in any way.
No, and you're at best third in that division in preseason rankings. At best.
Yeah. And
most likely fourth.
And the other thing is with Garoppolo, I mean, there's it, just like Kyle found out. I mean, there's a ceiling to what that can be. And when you're playing against Herbert and Mahomes 4 times a year.
Yeah.
And that's part of your operation, that's tough. Go ahead.
From Dave Lombardi. The list of players who have suited up for both the 49ers and the Raiders is illustrious. Listen to this list. It's actually pretty good. Jerry Rice.
Well, Rice and Lott right away.
Jerry Rice, Jim Plunkett, Ronnie Lott, Roger Craig, Rod Woodson. I would not have had that. Charlie Garner.
I didn't know Woodson played for the Niners.
Me neither.
I remember with the Raiders.
Charlie Garner, who was electric.
Yeah.
Alden Smith, Randy Moss, Tom Rathman.
Wow, Randy. So was it Minnesota to the Raiders, then to the Patriots for the resuscitation?
Yes. Yeah, I believe that's right. Tom Rathman, Bill Romanowski.
Rathman, wow.
And now Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, that's a pretty good. That's pretty solid.
You're probably the starting strong safety on the all-NFL team is Lott, and the starting receiver is Jerry Rice. So that's the fact that they both did. It starts there as a pretty good jumping-off point for that. So you wait on Rodgers. That's an interesting tidbit on Ben. He said it's pure speculation, but nevertheless it's relatively educated speculation if we know Ben a little bit.
Yep.
That Rodgers could be waiting on some sort of date with a contract before anything happens there. But those things are blown in the wind, and if for some reason he retires and flakes out on the Jets, they've missed out on everybody else.
They've got nothing.
Because they were the front runners for Carr. They were right in the mix on him. They were interested in Garoppolo. Now those guys are gone. They would have nowhere else to turn if Rodgers doesn't come to fruition. You can't run back Zach Wilson now.
No. And Mike White is gone. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, maybe throw Jacoby Brissett in there. I feel like you
could. Yeah.
You could go Zach Wilson. Right.
Yeah. No, I don't think you're ever going back to that. That feels like that's done. So much more to come. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Quiet here, buddy, in the last hour or so.
Yeah, not a whole lot.
You're not up.
Not a whole lot going on. This just in from Tom Pelissero, not us.
Not us.
The Bengals are re-signing linebacker Jermaine Pratt, 3 years, $21 million per source, 10.35 in year one, 15.5 over 2. Started 54 career games. Now stayed in Cincinnati. That was one of the guys we got right. That was one of our pre-draft guys that we wanted.
Yeah, we liked him,
and he's ended up being a pretty productive player for them.
From Trey Wingo, hearing Rodgers to the Jets is done.
Wingo.
Still
in the mix.
Wingo
out there
out of
battling.
nowhere. Maybe he's fishing for something
because he's not.
But Wingo
he doesn't
says
work for anybody, does he?
Rodgers to the Jets is done. History about to repeat itself between New York and Green Bay. Time is indeed a flat circle. This is at 2:52. So,
well, one of the other things about Wingo is because of what he did for so many years at that level, he would. There's no question he'd have access to people that. Would give him stuff. So he would definitely have that. I mean, I think most of us assume that was the case, that it was Jets or not.
Yep.
There's really no other way for it to go.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, this conference is an absolute
1 minute
monster.
1 minute.
I mean, now you're going to have in the East, Buffalo, Miami if they can get a quarterback, I was going to say Green Bay and the Jets. In our division, you've got Cincinnati, you've got us, maybe Baltimore. The West, everybody. Well, I'd write out Las Vegas, but Kansas City, the Chargers, and Denver with Sean Payton. And then in the AFC South, you got the Jags. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
30.
9, maybe 10 teams that think like we could win the Super Bowl.
If things go correctly, we could win the Super Bowl. Yeah, that's a lot. Lots
in one conference, and in the NFC, it's the Niners, the Eagles.
Yeah.
Cowboys, talk yourself into it.
Yeah, it's a shame. He did not need to come in this. No. All right, the next level coming up next. We're back tomorrow. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.